He's selling out the interests of the United States. If that's not a threat to our national security, I don't know what is. I'm Susan Rice, and this is a word about why Americans need to take national security more seriously.
Of all the jobs in government, leading my national security team is certainly one of the most demanding, if not the most demanding.
I was President Obama's national security advisor in his second term and U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. And I have just published a book called Tough Love, My Story of the Things Worth Fighting For. And this is a book in which I describe both the lessons that I learned from my family, from my upbringing, from my service in government, and try to convey what it is like for somebody to work in the field of national security and foreign policy at the highest levels. The transition from the Obama administration to the Trump administration was really surreal. President-elect Trump and his team, with the exception of his national security advisor designate, had no interest in meeting with any of their Obama administration counterparts because for whatever reason, President Trump and his team weren't interested in learning what they needed to know to be ready to hit the ground on day one and govern responsibly. Now, the only place a transition occurred at all was between me and General Michael Flynn, who, as you will recall, was President Trump's national security advisor for about 24 days. Even though I think it's fair to acknowledge that he was not at all interested in my policy perspectives or policy advice, he was interested in learning from me, how do you do the job of national security advisor? At the end of our final meeting, when I stuck out my hand to shake his and wish him well, he asked if he could have a hug, which was not what I expected, but I gave it and wished him all the best in the job, but for better or for worse, he didn't last very long in it. I think most Americans are understandably focused on their daily lives, and I don't know that enough of us understand how important national security actually is. White nationalism is a national security challenge to the extent that people are taking their nationalist ideology, their white supremacist ideology, as I would call it, and translating it into acts of violence. And we've seen many, many examples, shooting up the synagogue in Pittsburgh or Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, and killing worshipers in their pews, all out of hate. So what we need to do from a national security point of view is to treat this threat the way we would a foreign terrorist threat on our soil, which is to use all the tools of law enforcement, intelligence, homeland security to track those who could pose a threat to the American people. As a former national security advisor, we deal with all kinds of very difficult issues. A rising China that's becoming more aggressive, a Russia that's happy to invade neighboring states, terrorists, viruses, you name it. The reason why Donald Trump is so concerning is that he is not conducting policy and using his office on behalf of the American people. He goes to Russia, to Ukraine, to China, and asks them to do his personal political bidding, to go after his political adversaries. He's turning on its head his oath of office, and he's abusing his office in a way that's really dangerous. He's selling out the interests of the United States, the interests of all those farmers and people who work in manufacturing and everybody who's suffered because of the Trump trade war in order to get some alleged dirt on his political rival. If that's not a threat to our national security, I don't know what is. Frankly, it's very important for citizens to be knowledgeable and engaged and not leave the business of national security to unknown people in Washington who may be nameless or faceless. That means that they've got to be informed participants, informed voters. If Americans can take it for granted that they will be safe and protected and that our economy will continue to grow, then we're doing our jobs properly in Washington. But I think, frankly, it's not wise, particularly at this moment, where our alliances are in disarray, where we have a president whose leadership is questioned throughout the world and his truthfulness is questioned throughout the world, and he's embracing our adversaries and starting trade wars, all these things that leave us potentially less safe and secure. So Americans do need to recognize that we can't take for granted our leadership in the world or our national security.